Shalom, this is Shira Sherbo coming to you from Sfat Israel, Torah for the Nations, and we've been talking about how in the end, every single creature that walks the earth will recognize and know the one true God. So a few years ago, I was at a garage sale in Texas, and they were selling this purse for $10, which is kind of high price for a purse at a garage sale. So I asked the lady if she'd come down. And she said, "Oh no, I can't take any less than $10 for that purse because that's a real Jennifer Lopez purse. My daughter just had to have it, and then she hardly used it. I paid over $100 for it. So this is an authentic Jennifer Lopez purse that I got for $10. This, on the other hand, these are cubic zirconians. This is a fake diamond bracelet. So it's important when you're going to pay for something to recognize and know whether you got the real deal or whether you got an imitation or a knockoff brand. So this is definitely true when it comes to God. We have to, and many of you, if you're watching me, you have started to realize that something was a little off and that maybe what got given to us as God was really not really the real deal. And we got cut off from Moses, and we were presented a whole new story about who God was. And so we've had to recover our lost inheritance, and we've had to recover our one true God. And it's aggravating because, you know, a little 6-year-old child in Hebrew school is connected to the Hebrew language, and he would know right away when something was amiss and when something wasn't true about God. So here are a few things that you probably have already found out on your own that would be true of a pagan God, but not true of the one true God. It was okay to take sacrifices to a pagan God that were killed very brutally. But the one true God would never accept anything that was killed without total mercy. This is one thing that he was training our family in the desert about. When you put down an animal, before you are allowed to eat an animal, but you can't eat an animal the way animals eat other animals. We are human beings, and we are being raised to a level of elevating everything on earth and making this earth a home for God. So when you see these nature shows and you see animals eat other animals while they're still alive, and it's very brutal sometimes, and it's hard to watch. And God was showing how when we bring animals to be offered up, there can't be any brutality. Everything about putting an animal down and eating an animal has to be done in a humane way, with dignity to the animal and elevating it. Okay, so that's one way to know if pagan gods, you can bring anything that was brutally killed, murdered, it's acceptable. Of course, any little 6-year-old kid knows that God doesn't accept human sacrifices. So if your God accepts human sacrifices that were brutally killed, that is not the one true God. That is a pagan God. Another important thing to know is that all human beings are made in the image of God, and that God doesn't mate with humans, and so there are no humans on the earth that have special. All human beings have 2 human parents. In the pagan world, there's this thought that God mates with humans, and that there are beings that are demigods, part God, part human. Okay, that is not a thought that came down from the one true God. That is a pagan thought. The word salvation kind of got changed over the years. If somebody comes up to you and asks you, "Are you saved?" then you can be sure that that is nothing that, if you're following the one true God, that you would ever have to ask. Like the God of David, David said, "Thank you for saving me from my enemies." And salvation was something that was very obvious to everyone, so nobody ever had to ask, "Are you saved?" So that came along when words were lost in translation and salvation got to mean something else. And also the word sacrifice, in Hebrew the word is korban, and korban doesn't really mean sacrifice. Korban means to draw near. And God came up with a system for all of us to, when we got spiritually ill, just like when you're like physically ill, you go to the doctor, to the clinic, and there's a system in place of, okay, here's the procedure, here's the remedies, here's what you do to get well. So if you were sick spiritually, God had a system in place that you went through to it was all about restoring the relationship with Him and recovering what was damaged in the relationship. So He had a system in place, and so these korbans were to draw near. So they weren't really, God doesn't need sacrifices, but He needs our obedience, and that was the message. And that's why what they were doing there thousands of years ago, even though we're removed from that, and we just we go to the store and we buy our meat, we don't really come in contact with sheep and cows most of the time. But if we look at the message that was going on behind what they were doing, it was all about restoring the relationship with God and getting back close to Him once again. And so you can't, just like you wouldn't send someone else to the clinic or to take your place physically, it was something that each of us has to do on our own. So that's another way to know if you are following the one true God. It's a relationship between you and Him. There's no intermediaries for you. You have to work out your relationship with Him. Okay, so you might ask, so what happened? Why are so many people worshiping the wrong God who accepts brutality and accepts human sacrifice and all of these other things? How was it that people didn't recognize that they got a knockoff, or they didn't get the real thing? We watched this movie that we watched on Netflix. It reminded me of what kind of happened and how we, in thousands of years later, after God appeared on Mount Sinai, we were presented a whole different God. So in this movie that we watched, it was called Security. And there was starring Antonio Banderas. It's like a 2017 movie. It's kind of like a Die Hard movie. Anyway, there's an 11-year-old girl in this movie, and she's running from a psychopath who wants to kill her, and she was a witness to his crime. And so they ambushed the police that were escorting her. She was going to go and she was going to testify against them. And so all the police were killed. And so this little girl is running for her life, and she comes to a mall, and she's banging on the door. And the mall security guards let her in. And a little while later, there's a guy that comes to the mall, and he says, he looks pretty normal guy, and he says, "I'm looking for my daughter." And of course, he's not her father, and the security guards don't fall for it, and they don't hand her over to him. And so he realizes, that he tries to give them a bribe. And what the deal is they can either take the bribe, all this money he offers them to hand over the girl, or they're going to die. And so that's when the whole Die Hard plot takes place in the mall. But there was a lot of bloodshed for the sake of, they saw that this man was not the real deal. He was an imitation father. He was the fake father, and he had an agenda. And so if you look back in history and you see the holy wars and what happened to people at knife point, what they were told to believe or die, you can see how over the centuries we got handed the knockoff brand, the imitation brand, the wrong God. So, and like I said, if you're watching this, you've probably already realized that. And one of the commandments for all of the sons of Noah is to honor God. And you have to, of course, know who He is and put enough effort and investigation into knowing that there was something done in history that there's... Some people don't care. Some people don't care if they have cubic zirconians. Some people don't care if they have the off-brand or the knockoff brand. But if you're looking for the one true God, and He wants you to, He says, seek me and find me if you seek me with all your heart. He doesn't want you to be complacent and just accept the imitation, accept the off-brand, accept something that got passed down because of murder and bribery and a bunch of things that were done in the past. So in the end, every single creature that walks the earth will recognize and know the one true God. And just kol hakavod, much respect to all of you who have done your homework, have researched, and you know who God is and who God isn't. Okay, that's all for now.